If Trump is the Antichrist, what should we be watching for? What are the signs? 12 Bible verses to look for. Sign number 1, the beast has 3.5 years. Revelations chapter 13, verse 3. The beast was given a mouth to brag and speak evil things against God. The beast was allowed to use its authority for 42 months. Sign number 1, death of the beast. Daniel chapter 8, verse 25. He will tell lies in order to succeed. He will think he is more important than anyone else. When people feel safe, he will destroy many of them. He will stand up against the greatest prince of all, Jesus. Then he, the beast, will be destroyed, but he will not be killed by human beings. So if President Trump is the Antichrist or the first beast, then his power will probably be ending around July 2028. According to the Bible, the first beast and the false prophet are both killed, though not by human hands, after 42 months of rule. So again, if it starts in January 2025, we'd say July 2028. There are biblical scholars who say the beast is in power for 7 years, because the tribulation is supposed to be 7 years, in which case either we're only beginning the beast rule of 7 years. But in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think the 7 years actually refer to as 2 separate presidential terms, which put together would probably make 7 years total. Now, normally 2 presidential terms would be 8 years, and this would mean that Trump will not finish his second term in office. Now, of course, he's an old man, could die naturally. All they say in the Bible is the Antichrist or the first beast and the false prophet die, but not by human hands. There's also a warning in those verses that I just read that people just start to feel safe when the beast will pull the rug out from underneath them. Safety with the beast is an illusion. You are never safe with the beast. And again, if Trump is the beast, you will never be safe. Sign number 2, a peace treaty destroyed. Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. This king, the beast, will make a 7-year treaty with the people, but after half that time he will break his pledge and stop the Jews from all their sacrifices and their offerings. Then, as a climax to all his terrible deeds, the enemy shall utterly defile the sanctuary of God. But in God's time and plan, his judgment will be poured out upon this evil one. So, peace treaty destroyed. We have a couple of potential suspects about that. First could be potential renewing of the Abraham Accords, which was originally September 2020. The Abraham Accords were originally between Israel, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, and Sudan. It was a covenant of many. So potentially, and Trump has been talking about this, there might be a new Abraham Accords that includes more people, which again, he could betray. Another possibility is Trump is currently saying he wants to take over Gaza and turn it into a Mediterranean Riviera. And that's to happen, there has to be some sort of peace treaty. But if U.S. troops are in Gaza, that would probably break the peace treaty. I'm flabbergasted at the naivete of Trump and his hubris, his sheer hubris to want to take over a land that has been blood-soaked for more than one millennia, that more than one nation has been fought over, and he just wants to put up some casinos and hotels because he thinks he can make lots of money. And then to involve U.S. troops in this, that is insane. But could be another one of the peace treaties that's destroyed. Now, I did want to mention that Trump has a history of breaking treaties. So here's a list of treaties Trump has already broken. The first is NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement from 1992, which was free trade between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. He ripped that up and then created a new USMCA, United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, which Trump signed in November of 2018. And he's already ripped it up at the beginning of his new presidency, threatening tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and basically rescinding the agreement he signed himself just a few years earlier. He's also rescinded the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, which is the Iran deal. Unfortunately, now Iran has enough material for 6 nuclear bombs. That might not have happened if he hadn't ripped that up. He's gotten out of the Paris Agreement, which is climate change. Every country on Earth has signed it except for Eritrea, Libya, South Sudan, Yemen, and now us. So we're again pals with Yemen and Sudan, apparently. He ripped up the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was 12 Pacific Rim economies to have free trade or to lower the tariffs. He also ripped up the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which was originally signed by Gorbachev and Reagan in 1987 to get rid of some nuclear weapons. He ripped that one up. He also got the United States off of the United Nations Human Rights Council. So this is a sad day when the United States leaves the Human Rights Council in the United Nations. And lastly, he left UNESCO, which is the United Nations Culture and Education body. So those are a few treaties Trump has broken. So if a peace treaty is going to be destroyed, this should be no surprise. He has a history of breaking treaties. Sign number 3, the mark of the beast. Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 18. The false prophet also forced everyone to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. People great or small, rich or poor, free or slave, had to receive the mark. They could not buy or sell anything unless they had the mark. The mark is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This problem requires wisdom. Anyone who is wise should figure out what the beast's number means. It is the number of a man, and the number is 666. So there's so much to say about the mark of the beast. I went into this in much more detail in my second video about Elon Musk. But just a quick little summary here. If you look at 666 written in Greek on the right-hand side of the screen here, you can kind of see the handwritten symbol, and underneath it, if you wrote it, the Greek letters 666 on a computer. Notice the first letter. The first symbol is X, or Chi is the Greek letter for that. It's very interesting that Elon Musk likes to name everything X. So his son is little x. His first company was X.com. One of his Tesla car models is called the Model X. And of course, Twitter used to be called Twitter, and he renamed it as X. So he's very into renaming things X and looking at this like, oh, maybe that's why. It's part of the mark of the beast, all of his companies. Now, another interesting thing about Elon Musk, and I want to kind of back into this a little bit, people are currently being microchipped in Sweden and the United States and are using the microchip for financial transactions. And guess where the microchip goes? There's 2 places. The main one is in the fleshy area between your thumb and your index finger, so on your hand. There's also something called Neuralink, which puts it in your brain. So remember, it talks about the mark of the beast being on the right hand or the forehead. So that's kind of scary. And then this microchip is being used for 2 separate things. So the one in the hand is currently being used for financial transactions in both Sweden and the United States. It's kind of being used almost like an Apple Wallet or your credit card, but in your body. Now, the company Neuralink, well, that is a really interesting one. It has a brain chip that they have created, and originally was created for paraplegic people, and it puts the chip in their forehead, and people who cannot move their arms and legs can actually move a computer interface, move a mouse and communicate with a computer, and for example, play computer games and do other things with this chip, which is actually put inside their brain. So this brain chip has been tested on humans with Neuralink. Neuralink, when you go to a Greek numerology website and you type a Neuralink, it says it's 666. So, Neuralink 666, and we have the mark of the beast. So Neuralink could be the company that creates the mark of the beast. Another interesting thing is Elon Musk, if you've been following the news, has been grabbing data from the U.S. Treasury Department, the Internal Revenue Service, Medicare, and Medicaid. So if he wanted to, and he could do this as being part of the Trump administration, he could have people required to be microchipped to get money from the U.S. government. So for example, oh, you want your Social Security payment. Oh, you want your tax refund. You need that microchip to buy and sell. And so by forcing people to be microchipped to get their Social Security payments, tax refunds, he could potentially be forcing people to get the mark of the beast unwittingly. So keep an eye out for that. So here is Neuralink. You can see on the left in English, in the middle in Greek, and then the actual requisite number in Greek on the right-hand side. You can see how it all adds up to 666. Sign number 4, the 7 plagues, the first trumpet. 1/3 of the trees and grass are burned up. So in the Bible, trees and grass can sometimes refer trees as political leaders and grass as spiritual leaders. So it could be saying that 1/3 of the political leaders and the spiritual leaders in Israel are burned up or destroyed. You could say with what's going on with the current Israeli government and all the problems they're having with just trying to get a majority in power to do something, you could say maybe 1/3 of their political leaders and maybe their spiritual leaders have been burnt up. But you can also say literally, currently there are fires all over the world. I have a screenshot here for January 9th, 2025, and fires going on throughout the world. But typically, when you read Revelation, written by John of Patmos, again, he wrote it when he was in an island in the Mediterranean Sea, it's typically referring to the Mediterranean area. And here is a screenshot of fires in southern Lebanon and northern Israel, and you can see it's about 1/3 of the area is burnt up in that screenshot. Trumpet number 2, 1/3 of the sea dies, a great mountain of fire is thrown into the sea. So when it refers to the sea, it's referring to the Mediterranean Sea. It's not referring to all the seas. It's referring to the Mediterranean Sea. One of the things I think we should keep an eye out for is Santorini. If you're watching Santorini, they have a lot of earthquakes that are going on right now. And I don't know how many people are aware that the middle of Santorini Island is a volcano. And the volcano, which is at Akrotiri at, I believe, is 1600 BC, blew up most of the island. And if that volcano is coming back, and if it does explode, 1/3 of the sea could die. 1/3 of the Mediterranean Sea in that area could die, and a great mountain of fire could be potentially thrown in the sea. So keep an eye out on Santorini there. Third trumpet, 1/3 of drinkable water turns bitter. So again, if there is that sort of cataclysmic volcanic eruption in the Mediterranean area, 1/3 of the drinkable water in the area could turn bitter or undrinkable. The fourth trumpet, 1/3 of the heavens went dark. Now this could be literal or figurative, and I believe this is more figurative. So a fallen star, 1/3 of the heavens turning dark, typically refers to the fallen angels. So the devil and his cohorts, the fallen angels, fought against God and the archangel Michael, and they were kicked out of heaven. So 1/3 of the heavens went dark. 1/3 of those angels were kicked out of heaven, and they were in the air above earth. Number 5, the fifth trumpet, a star falls from the sky, and the beast wields his military might. So the star that falls from the sky is typically represented as the morning star or Satan. So in this case, we're saying Satan falls from the sky after 1/3 of the heavenly hosts, the fallen angels, are kicked out of heaven. And then when Satan falls to earth, first he's in the air and eventually get to earth, the beast, the first beast, will wield the military might of Satan. So again, the first beast is powered by Satan, or the fallen star. Now the sixth trumpet, there's an army of 200 million, and 1/3 of mankind is killed by fire, smoke, sulfur, and earthquake. So I want to go over this army of 200 million. So specifically, where does this 200 million come from? So Revelations chapter 9, verse 16, the number of the mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number. So that is 200 million. So I actually looked up, okay, so how many people do we have in the entire world who are part of the military? And if you actually add up, this is a statistic from 2021, so maybe not current, but it should be about the correct number. I added up, if you include NATO, China, India, US, North Korea, Russia, Pakistan, South Korea, and Iran, I added up 12.9 million troops. So nowhere near 200 million. So where is John of Patmos getting this 200 million? So let's kind of listen to Revelation chapter 9, verses 7 through 10. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails with stingers like scorpions, and their tails they had the power to torment people for 5 months. So let's think about modern warfare and what John of Patmos in the 1st century AD might have been looking at and trying to describe here. And again, John of Patmos wouldn't know what a drone swarm was, would not have known what a helicopter is, but I really think he's describing the helicopter and the drone swarms really, really well here. So their heads, they were something like crowns of gold. It was metal, it's rotating, and their faces resembled human faces. So if you look at the front of a helicopter, it has 2 bulbous window shields that look like eyes. Their hair was like women's hair. So when you have the rotating blades of the rotors, if you've ever looked at them, it looks like black hair rotating or flopping in the wind is what it looks like. And then it says the sounds of their wings was like the thundering many horses and chariots rushing to battle. Whether you heard a helicopter or a swarm of drones, there's that very loud noise. Helicopters, it's almost deafening. When I went on a helicopter, I had to wear muffs on my ears to prevent our ears from being damaged from the noise. And again, the drone swarm also has their own noise. And then the stingers, tails like stingers. That is just almost perfectly describing a helicopter with those stinger tails. Now, this is a screenshot I got from the current Army website, and it describes how a helicopter can control a drone swarm. So you have a helicopter which controls the drone swarms. It sends the information for where the drone swarms are supposed to go, where they're supposed to attack. And so that one helicopter controls a large amount of drones. Can you imagine 200 million drones and a helicopter and military personnel in Megiddo? So I think that is interesting. Okay, trumpet number 7. The devil arrives on earth and he is angry. Revelations chapter 12, verse 12. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and to the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his his time is short. So the devil has been kicked out of the heavens and he is currently on the air, but then he goes down to the earth and the sea. Specifically in Revelations, the earth is the false prophet and the sea is the first beast or the Antichrist. And the devil has gone down to the false prophet and the Antichrist, creating this unholy triumvirate, kind of their unholy trinity. And he is full of fury because he knows his time is short. So once the first beast comes into power, once the false prophet comes into power, there was only 42 months of power. And again, the devil is angry. He is furious and his time is short. So I'm glad his time is short, but we're going to be facing fury, a lot of it. The next sign number 4 is the 7 bowls. The first bowl, angry, painful sores broke out on the people who had the mark of the beast. I've already talked about the mark of the beast and how people could potentially get that. And if they do get it, they're going to get ugly, painful sores that will not heal. The second bowl is the sea turns to blood. Again, the sea in this case is the Mediterranean Sea. Now, if Santorini explodes and has a volcanic explosion, if there's a lot of iron in the volcanic explosion, that'll actually turn the water red. Currently in the Antarctic, there's a waterfall that has iron in it, and it looks like blood red is draining over this kind of ice shelf. So when it says the sea turns to blood, I think it simply means iron ore is in the sea, again, potentially maybe from a volcanic explosion, so keep an eye out for that. Third bowl, rivers and springs turn to blood. Again, if that volcanic explosion with iron ore goes out on a larger area, you're going to have areas actually look like they're turned to blood. Bowl number 4, the sun burned people with a blazing heat. I think everyone already knows things are getting hotter and hotter, and the Middle East was never cool to begin with. The Middle East, of course, is a desert. So it is getting hotter there. People are dying. For example, in one of the Hajjs at Mecca recently, it was during the summer, and I will have to look up exactly how many people died, but quite a few people died of heat stroke while at Mecca because of the blazing heat. Bowl number 5. The beast kingdom becomes very dark. People chewed their tongues and suffering from pains and sores. So if Trump is the first beast, that means the United States becomes dark. I don't think it means like a darkness literally goes across the land, though you could say that some of the solar eclipses could be that. But I think it means like Satan, darkness falls upon that kingdom of the beast. In this case, perhaps this is the United States, and just a total darkness falls on it. And I hate to say it, it does kind of seem like this is happening with Trump's New World Order, which has everything on its heels. Now he sides with autocrats. He sides with Russia against democratic governments. He likes Kim Jong-un, who's an autocrat, and he likes China and kind of wishes he could rule like them. So his kingdom is already becoming dark. And perhaps it'll get worse, but it's talking about the beast kingdom becoming dark. And then physical problems to the people of the beast kingdom. They're suffering for their pains and sores, perhaps from the mark of the beast. The 6th bowl, the Euphrates dries up, and the kings gather at Armageddon for battle. There are huge hailstones weighing about 100 pounds that fall from the sky. So it becomes so hot, and there is no rain in the Middle East area for so long that the river Euphrates dries up. Now, the river Euphrates is like our Colorado River. Colorado River, even in the United States, is drying up in certain parts because, trying to divvy up the water there. So there could be something similar happening here in the Middle East. And then the kings gather at Armageddon or Megiddo, and I'll go into this a little more later here. And these huge hailstones that are 100 pounds fall from the sky. And for me, I'm just seeing bombs. Man, imagine if you're John of Patmos at first century AD and you're seeing these images of these bombs falling onto the ground, and they look like these 100-pound hailstones, but they're bombs. So I do believe these are bombs that he's actually describing there. Bowl number 7, flashes of lightning, thunder, and a worldwide earthquake. Cities of the nations crumble, including Babylon the Great. So after all that happens, after Armageddon, again, just worldwide devastation happens. And in my opinion, I'll go over this more in my next video, Babylon the Great is Rome, Jerusalem, and Mecca would be destroyed. Sign number 6 to look for, the holy city is captured. Revelations chapter 11, verse 2. The Gentiles will take over the holy city for 42 months. Luke chapter 21, verses 24 through 28. And Jerusalem will be trampled down by the Gentiles until the period of the Gentiles comes to an end. And there will be strange signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. And here on earth, the nations will be in turmoil, perplexed by the roaring seas and strange tides. People will be terrified at what they see coming upon the earth, for the power in the heavens will be shaken. Then everyone will see the Son of Man coming on a cloud with power and great glory. So when all these things begin to happen, stand and look up, for your salvation is near. So 2 things to keep in mind here. The Gentiles will take over the holy city for 42 months. Some people have said, well, that refers to the Romans who took over and destroyed the temple in 70 AD. But that doesn't call into effect the second part where it says the Son of Man, which is Jesus' second coming. So after the fall of the temple in 70 AD, Jesus' second coming did not happen. It hasn't happened yet. So I think this is referring to a new takeover of the holy city by a new group of Gentiles. And if Trump is the Antichrist or the first beast, that would be the United States taking over the holy city, which is just, as a Christian, just is so horribly sad and just awful. It's not our place to be there. So Trump is currently talking about occupying Gaza. He wants to make it the Mediterranean Riviera. So if he wants to do that, if he wants to build his casinos and hotels in Gaza, you're going to have U.S. troops there. If you have U.S. troops there, Trump is talking about rebuilding the temple. The Jewish community is talking about rebuilding the temple. Would he then send U.S. troops to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple? I don't know, but that could potentially happen. And again, in Revelation, it specifically says the Gentiles will be in the holy city, Jerusalem, for a while. Sign number 7, 2 witnesses. Revelation chapter 11, verses 2 through 3, 5 through 7, 11. I will appoint my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days. They will be dressed in rough clothes people wear when they're sad. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and eats up their enemies. These witnesses have power to close up the sky. Then it will not rain while they are prophesying. They have the power to turn the waters into blood, and they can strike the earth with every kind of plague. The beast that comes from the abyss will attack them and kill them. But after 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered the witnesses. They stood up. Terror struck those who saw them. So who are these 2 witnesses? Now, the first thing which I find kind of interesting is if you actually look up the Greek word for witness, it's actually used in this text. It uses the word martys. First, martys is masculine, so the witnesses are 2 men. And martys means 3 things. It means witness, martyr, and testimony. If you look at what they do, they're actually all 3. They are martyrs. They are dying for their religious cause, and they do die. What is interesting is just like Jesus, they come back after 3 days, and they are alive again. They are also witnesses, and they bear the testimony. And they're telling the people, this is who the beast is. Again, people are not believing. People hate these witnesses who are prophesying in Jerusalem. And they're specifically referring to Jerusalem. It does say in Revelations, they figuratively call it Sodom and Egypt, but it also says where their Lord was crucified. So their Lord, Jesus Christ, was crucified in Jerusalem, so it is referring to Jerusalem. When they call it Sodom and Egypt, typically in the Bible, whenever they're referring to something as Sodom, they're referring to a morally corrupt city or civilization, whatever they refer to as Sodom. And Egypt, they also considered morally corrupt. So this is saying it's a disobedient Israel, which is worthy of the same plagues that happened in Egypt during the Exodus is going to happen to them. Another interesting thing about the 2 witnesses is they tend to be described almost like Moses and Elijah. So Moses called on the plagues of Egypt, Elijah shut off rain and brought fire. It's also interesting that they're dressed in sackcloth or a garment of hair. Typically in the Middle East, this would be camel hair, but it could also be sheep hair or wool. And if you've ever wore real wool, I haven't worn camel hair, but if you've worn wool, it's very scratchy. So sackcloth or animal hair or a garment made of animal hair is something that's usually used during mourning. It's not considered something you'd want to wear to be comfortable. But these 2 witnesses will be at Jerusalem. So watch and see if there's any 2 witnesses that start to speak out in Jerusalem. Sign number 8, Holy City is destroyed. Revelation chapter 17, verse 16. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will destroy her and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. There's so much to go into with this verse, and I'll be going over this more in my next video. But typically the prostitute in the Bible, especially if you read the book of Jeremiah, is talking about people who do not obey God. People who do not obey God do not do what God has told you to do, and you have prostituted yourself to other gods rather than your true God. In my opinion, the prostitute is Rome, which most people have said it's Rome, but it's also Jerusalem and Mecca. All 3 of them have 7 hills. All 3 of them are holy cities that have prostituted themselves and I would say worship money instead of worshiping God. All three of them, you could say, have that sin. Not that any of us are perfect, but whoa, I'll get into that in my next video. Sign number 9, the elect are deceived. Matthew chapter 24, verses 24 through 25. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time. So this is Jesus speaking to his disciples, telling them about the false messiahs and false prophets who appear and deceive the elect. Now, if you're wondering, who are the elect? The elect are typically the religious leaders. So the Pharisees, the Sadducees that are talked about in the Old Testament, those are the elect, and the elect are deceived. So let's talk about the elect being deceived right now. Elon Musk, during the presidential inauguration, did a Nazi salute twice in front of a presidential podium, which as an American, I'm just aghast that that was allowed to happen. And then right afterwards, a priest with the Catholic Church from Michigan does a Nazi salute just like Elon Musk did, apparently in solidarity with Musk. Now, this priest was defrocked and fired from the Catholic Church for doing the Nazi salute. They said very specifically, we believe that those who mimic the Nazi salute, even as a joke or an attempt to troll their opponents, trivialize the horror of the Holocaust and diminish the sacrifice of those who fought against its perpetrators. So let's look at what the Nazi salute means, because I think a lot of people don't even understand anymore. It's not just a salute. The Nazis killed 17 million people between 1933 and 1945. Not just Jews being burnt and gassed to death in concentration camps. They killed Soviet civilians, Soviet prisoners of war, Polish people, Gypsies, Serbians, disabled people, Jehovah's Witnesses, anyone they didn't consider the Übermensch, the Nazi Aryan race. They killed them. 17 million people. If you're doing a Nazi salute, you're saying, I'm okay with 17 million people dying. And I am aghast that a Catholic priest would do that. I don't think that's what he meant, but he should have realized what that means. And the other thing to keep in mind, going back to how the false prophets will appear and perform signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. This Catholic priest, would he have done that Nazi symbol if Elon Musk hadn't done it first? I doubt it. I don't think he would have been led astray if Elon Musk hadn't started it. Watch who you imitate. Sign number 10, wars and persecution. Matthew chapter 24, verses 6 through 8. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Now, this is Jesus again speaking to his disciples. And I will say, I can tell you personally that for my entire life, this could apply at any moment in time. Wars and rumors of wars, nations against nations, kingdom against kingdom, famines and earthquakes. So I wanted to just go over right now. What is going on right now? So if you look at the armed conflict location events data for 2025, you'll see all of these areas here have armed conflicts currently going on. So that is Ukraine, Gaza, the West Bank of Israel, Lebanon, Mexico, Colombia, Iran, Pakistan, Yemen, Myanmar, Sudan, Sahel in West Africa, and the Great Lakes in Africa. So all of those are currently wars going on. Now, as far as rumors of wars, very interesting. Trump, just after he gets elected, threatens Canada, Mexico, Greenland, Denmark, Gaza, the Panama Canal, and Ukraine with invasion or to start a war with them, which is insane. Some of these people like Canada and Mexico, those are our close allies, and he threatens to go to war with them. Wars and rumors of war. Putin, of course, has been threatening Eastern Europe for pretty much the last 20 years. Nothing new there, but again, that is also a rumor of war. Now, there's many unsettled areas where I won't say they're at war, but they're not at peace, and that'd be Syria, Iran, Jordan, Haiti, Somalia, Korea, Myanmar, and Mexico. Currently, there are famines going on in Gaza, Haiti, Mali, Nigeria, Sudan, Yemen, Somalia, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Afghanistan, and El Salvador. As far as earthquakes, in 2025 alone, earthquakes that are of 5+ magnitude are currently in Santorini, Greek island, China, Honduras, Mexico, California, the Philippines, Taiwan, Indonesia, and Japan. So, sign number 10, does the wars and persecution, wars, rumors of wars, does seem to be applying to our current time, but again, we applied to many, many times in the past. I think if things get worse, if there's more wars and rumors of wars, more earthquakes, more famine, that's going to show that the end times are here. Sign number 11, the beast is at the holy place. Matthew 25, verses 15 through 21. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. For then there will be a great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and it will never be equaled again. So would the beast, the first beast, which could be Trump, would he go to the holy place, which is Jerusalem? Now, Trump has already said he wants to be in Gaza to rebuild, apparently, these hotels and casinos and make it the Mediterranean Riviera. Once he's there, would he move to Jerusalem? And there has been talk about rebuilding the temple. I can see Trump wanting to get involved there and putting his name on the temple. If that happens, that should be the big sign that things are about to go down. And of course, anyone in the Middle East, it says flee to the mountains, get out of there. Bad things are going to happen. Sign number 12, armies gather at Megiddo. Revelation chapter 16, verses 13 through 16. And I saw 3 evil spirits that look like frogs leap from the mouths of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. They are demonic spirits who work miracles and go out to all the rulers of the world to gather them for battle against the Lord on the great judgment day of God the Almighty. Look, I come unexpectedly as a thief. Blessed are all who are watching for me and who keep their clothing ready, so they will not have to walk around naked and ashamed. And the demonic spirits gathered all the rulers and their armies to a place with the Hebrew name Armageddon. Okay, so I need to go over this. Most people hear Armageddon, and there's these images of these great armies battling and having this huge battle. So Megiddo is a town in northeast Israel. And by the way, I want to be very clear, it's called Megiddo. Specifically, it's called Tel Megiddo. So I want to go over the difference between Tel Megiddo and Ar Megiddo. Tel Megiddo means the plateau Megiddo, and I have actually been to Megiddo. It is a plateau. And what is very interesting, especially if armies are supposed to be gathering here and for Revelation, is armies have already gathered there. Egyptian armies have gathered there. Roman armies have gathered there. Greek armies have gathered there. And there's actually ruins where you can actually see the places where the Egyptian, Roman, and Greek armies gathered on this plateau. So it's a plateau overlooking the entire area. So it's a very good place for an army to gather. There's also a water cistern, which I walk through, which is next to the area. So it has its own very cold water running through the area as well. So it's, again, a good place for an army to set up tents. Now, it's currently Tel Megiddo. It's a plateau. It's not Ar Megiddo. Arm means mountain. So Mount Megiddo. It's not currently a mountain. It's a plateau. So this then brings up kind of an interesting thing. I'm sure you've heard of there's earthquake fault lines in Israel as well as most of the Middle East. I'm sure you heard about maybe what happened to Turkey a year or two ago. So next to Megiddo, if you look at this map, look at the M, that is where Megiddo is. There's all these fault lines. There's a Carmel fault line. There's a Gideon fault line. There's all these fault lines next to Megiddo. So if there's a major earthquake near Megiddo, it can make that plateau a mountain as it rises up if those plates run together. So right now, Megiddo is a plateau. It's not a mountain, but I would keep an eye out to see, is that going to be a mountain? Another interesting thing, and here's a kind of a Google Maps of the area, is you'll see Megiddo Prison is near the Megiddo National Park, which is, again, where that plateau is, where people are supposed to be gathering their armies, or the kings are gathering their armies. Megiddo Prison is Israel's version of Alcatraz. It's where the worst of the worst are put into prison. And there's these fault lines nearby. So you can imagine the fault lines maybe making Megiddo from a plateau to a mountain, and then the prisoners, unfortunately, escaping. Now, the number 200 million army is mentioned in Revelation chapter 9, verses 16 through 18. However, it could be referred to an army of demons rather than a human army. The text is unclear. The number could also have a modern interpretation, for example, a swarm of drones that might gather that make it 200 million. So when the armies gather at Megiddo, the actual number of the armies and which armies are gathered is not specified. However, it does mention that many rulers and their armies are gathered here at Megiddo. In summary, here are the 12 signs you should look for if perhaps President Trump is the Antichrist and Elon Musk is the false prophet. Beast in power for 3.5 years. There'll be a canceled peace treaty. We'll have the mark of the beast. There'll be several plagues, earthquakes. Jerusalem will be captured. Also at Jerusalem, 2 prophets will be there. Holy cities will be destroyed. The elect will be deceived. There'll be wars and rumors of wars. The beast will defile the temple, and then the first beast and the false prophet will die, though not by human hands. In my next video, I will go over who is the beast with the 7 heads, who is the prostitute who rides the beast. This is all, of course, very symbolic. I'll be going over that in the next video. In the meantime, stay safe and God bless.